All right, so kind of similar to what we talked about last week, I want to talk about today, moving from a person to moving from a person that's on a diet to a person that values health. You guys probably know, going through this journey yourself, people always ask you, oh, you're on a diet, how long is your diet going to last, kind of thing. But for me personally, when I get a question like that, I tell them like, look, like I've been doing this quote unquote diet thing for close to 10 years now. This is not really a diet for me. It is a lifestyle. Um, and I also value my health as well too. So, kind of in the same, alignment with what we talked about last week, with, trying to use use muscle as like a longevity insurance. We're going to talk today about trying to shift, how you think about yourself as far as like the identity shift that you need to make, moving from a person on a diet just to get from weight A to weight B, right? To a person who actually values their health and changes their mindset, and gets them to a better place, both physically and mentally as well too. So if we look at the logic and the practice of this, so the logic is habits aren't going to stick without you having the identity stuck to it, right? If we have some kind of out-based goal like losing weight, adding on muscle, body recomposition, that sort of thing, um, a lot of people fail at these, to be honest with you, because they rely on just straight willpower. There is no they're just seeing the end goal as like, all right, if I lose this 20 pounds, you know, this is what's going to happen. But they're not kind of looking at it from a broader perspective of like, this is how it's going to make me feel, both, physically and mentally. How I'm going to speak to myself, talk to myself, how others are going to view me, things of that nature as well too. So like when they just get so focused on the outcome at the end of it, that's where, that willpower has to carry you through the entire thing. And again, that's why most people fail, when they have an outcome based goal like losing weight, gaining muscle, like that. So like if you shift it to, like if you have an identity based goal, such as like, you being an athlete, right? Like you see yourself as an athlete. You see yourself as, an individual who goes to the gym. You see yourself as a person who eats healthy, does all the right things. Like that's your identity, right? You're going to be more likely to succeed at this because they're just automatic, right? Like I see myself as a person who just loves fitness, who loves taking care of their health, who just loves being active in a general sense, right? And there are, some days to where like I don't feel like, getting my steps in, going to the gym, the things that would make my that identity that I see about myself become true. But I do them because they're just automatic, right? Like a lot of the times I just have to get out of the bed, eat a meal, and just go straight to the gym, not based off of willpower, but just because like this is who I am. This is what I do. And once I get going, obviously feel great to be there and I love being there. But, you know, if you can shift that, um, again, just having that outcome based goal into more of an identity based goal, you're more than likely to succeed in, whatever endeavor, that you're trying to do. So, if you look at this from the perspective of like it's a thing called the 1% identity vote. So every healthy choice that you make each and every day, is not just a diet win. It's not just another check on your meal adherence for the week, right? It's a vote for the person that you're becoming, right? And I always, kind of like to tell people, if they're struggling, with being on plan, trying to do all the right things. Every single thing that you do has to be intentional, right? You know as well as I do before pull up to the Taco Bell drive-through that this is probably not the best idea, right? But it's intentional. Nobody drove that car there but you, and even if somebody did drive you there, nobody spoke the words out of your mouth for you to order that food, right? Everything that you need to do needs to be intentional, and if you can think of it in that aspect, you're going to be a lot more likely to be successful in the endeavor that you're trying to do. So again, ask yourself, would a healthy person do this in that moment, right? And if the answer is no, well, then you probably should reevaluate, what you're doing. And so one thing that you need to do is look at the pattern interruption. So you want to kind of change the way that you speak to yourself, rewriting that internal script. Get yourself out of that victim mindset, and put yourself into a position of like, and I can do attitude, essentially. So the I don't versus I can't. So if you're telling yourself, I don't eat that, that's an identity, right? That's like me saying, I don't eat pizza every Sunday when I go to Sam's Club, right? Lord, God forbid, every time that I go in there on Sunday at 10:01 a.m. For some reason they open at 10. There's people sitting down and eating a pizza at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, right? That's not my identity. I don't eat that, right? Um, but if you're in the mindset of this victim narrative, oh, I can't eat that, right? Well, that's like, when you were younger, a teenager, and your mom or dad said, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's going to make you want to do it more and more at some point down the road, right? So, take yourself out of that, I can't mindset and put it into, hey, this is my identity. I don't eat stuff like that. I don't partake in things like that. Number two is the clean slate. So if you make a mistake, don't wait until next Monday. Start right then and there. If you on Monday you only got 7,000 steps, you're supposed to get 10,000 steps. Well, don't wait until all the stars align, the moon aligns, the weather's perfect to get 10,000 steps. Just get it the next day. There is no point in waiting several days. Life doesn't wait for anybody. Time goes on whether you like it or not. The sun's gonna is gonna go up and the sun's gonna go down. So just start the next day. Start ASAP if possible. Um, and then, if you can start, keeping a logbook for yourself, just start keeping one small promise to yourself daily to build that self-trust. Now, this is something similar to what I do with clients, again, who are just struggling, trying to catch a grasp on everything, right? It could be as something as, hey, this week we're not worried about food, water intake, nothing. I just want to, you to get your 7,000 steps in daily, right? And once they can, build that, over a 5 to, 7 day plan, and we're rolling good with that, okay. The next thing, let's make another promise to ourselves, hey, I'm going to drink a gallon of water a day. Just things that you can, slowly build yourself up to. That way that you're able to actually, trust yourself again. And you can, just kind of get used to doing these things. And then again, if you can start to stack these small things up that you do every single day, again, that's going to shift your identity into who you are as a person, right? And then, cognitive labeling. So you need to label the choice. So if we're shifting from, deprivation to discipline as freedom, we can think of this as like if you're in a cut, right? And your goal is to cut off 20 pounds of body fat, before that you go to the beach because you want to, go out there with your shirt off, right? Well, if you're thinking the entire time, yeah, I'm in this deprivation diet, I'm starving, I'm hungry, and I'm doing all these things. Just to get down, to this certain goal weight. But if you can think of it as hey, I'm just being disciplined for the next 3 or 4 months to where when I get to the beach, I can feel confident, I can feel comfortable, and I can be kind of free to take my shirt off, have the confidence to do the things that I want to do. Instead of just having this negative mindset about everything. Again, this goes back to that, having that victim mentality, that I don't versus that I can't mindset. Again, move from, I have to eat this way to I choose to fuel my ambition. Because at the end of the day, um, just because that you have a coach, that is trying to help you, get to your goal, you don't have to do anything, right? You are your own person, you are your own governing body. But you can shift your mindset of oh, I have to eat this chicken and rice, or I have to eat this steak and potatoes too. You know what? I choose to do this. I'm choosing to fuel my ambition to get up on stage one day. Drop 5 pant sizes. Gain 20 pounds of muscle. Whatever the case may be. Again, you got to get out of that victim mentality, that mindset, because this is in the end going to create that internal agreement within yourself, needed to make these long term results feel effortless. I mean, you know eh, if I started my fitness journey to where I was at now, and I said the goals out loud, that I have, now for myself, you know, 10 years ago, I'd have been like, man, that's gonna take 20 years to get there, 10 years to get there. How in the heck am I going to do this? And that would seem like a mountain to climb, right? But instead of doing that, thankfully I didn't do that because my goals have obviously changed since then. But it's more or less of just, hey, take it day by day, have believe in yourself is the main thing. Again, shifting from that victim mentality to, I'm choosing to do this, I am willing to, to do this, I can do this mentality. And you're going to see those long-term results feel pretty effortlessly. Now, this is more or less, you speaking in your, negotiator voice. So the difference in between somebody being elite and let's just be harsh about it, a quitter, is how they respond to the voice in their head that says, "You're tired, skip it, it's okay," whatever the case may be. Um, a couple of rules with this: the 2 minute rule. If you want to quit, just do it for 2 minutes. Once you start, that identity should take over. If you're truly in an identity shift, and you're trying to, change your perception of yourself, trying to change your own reality, right? Um, you just speaking that out loud, I quit, screw this, whatever. Within a few minutes, if that identity shift is real, you're going to be like, "Oh God, that was not good. I shouldn't have said that." Right? Like, let me take that back. Let me walk back into the gym. Let me, hop back on this treadmill. Whatever the case may be. And if it doesn't, then maybe you probably need to work on your identity shift a little bit more. Right? And then again, the I don't, versus the I can't. The I can't have that pizza, at Sam's Club at 10 a.m. Right? That's not a joke either. I joke about that all the time when we go in Sam's Club. But I can't have that pizza. Is a victim mentality to where I don't eat junk during the week. Is honestly just somebody who is prioritizing their goals to get them there faster. To be honest with you. And then again, the clean slate. A bad meal is just one bad vote. Kind of going back to that a 1%, identity vote. Every single choice that you make during the week, during the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, meal, whatever the case may be, you are either one vote toward the good or one vote toward the bad. So don't let one vote lose the entire election. Essentially, just if you made a mistake, that's okay. Clean slate. The next meal, the next day, whatever, start over, and you're good to go. So, with all that being said, it just needs to you got you guys just have to look at kind of how you approach things because I mean that how you talk to yourself is definitely a real thing, and there have been times to where like I can see in people's check-ins to where like their check-in is not that great, and kind of as we get down through the check-in, there's a lot of like self-negative talk inside of the check-in in itself, and that's when it's kind of time to reel things back in and say hey, you know you have to pull yourself out of this, victim mentality. You're the one that came to a coach, to me, whatever, wanting to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds. Nobody's making you do this, right? Why do you want to do this? So if you're having, struggles with that, go back to your initial why. Why did you initially want to do this? What feeling made you feel the way that you did that day to where you decided, hey, I want to lose, 50 pounds, right? You kind of always have to go back to your why. I mean, because, look, at the end of the day, I mean, nobody's coming to save you. Everybody has a sad story. Frankly, nobody cares. I mean, that just is what it is. Nobody cares. Everybody has their own problems, right? So, if you really want to make an effort to, see a better change in yourself, take yourself out of that, victim mentality, have that mindset shift of, maybe even I had the privilege to do this, right? But we all have two functioning legs, two functioning arms, right? And able body to make a change in ourselves. And at that point, you should take advantage of it. So, with that, do you have any questions? Anything to add to that at all?
I
I
will
wouldn't say that
say,
oh,
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
no. Okay. No, I was just gonna say I don't really have a question, but I was just gonna say like it is cool how like over time, like over the course of time doing it, it's just kind of like you pick up like you said, it's kind of just becomes an identity. So like you're not having to like keep track of like the metrics and all that. It just kind of comes like naturally.
Yep.
Um, I guess. And it's just like, I know it's like every Sunday I'm going to be doing like my meal prep for the most part. And then
Yep.
like, it just becomes kind of like a habit and second nature. So,
Yep. I mean, that's just like, if we, a lot of people's, I don't know, maybe I guess the best way to maybe explain this is like, my identity as like a bodybuilder, I guess is the best way to put that, is like I know that if I'm going on an overnight trip just to stay at somebody's house for one night, I know that with the lifestyle that I live, my identity shift is going to require me to pack meals for the next day, take all my supplements, like take all this good stuff, to whereas like a normal person down the street, they're just going to grab a clean pair of underwear and a clean pair of socks and clothes, for the next day, right? And the rest they'll figure it out. But for, kind of, what we do, it's more or less of like we have to plan a lot, and that's okay. That's a part of my identity. That's just what I have to do to get to where I want to be. So, it's definitely not for everybody, but kind of once you get into the rhythm of things, I think it's pretty easy. So,
Yeah.
Miss Allison, do you have something?
I get grief from them where they're like, Allison, you need to let your hair down. You need to have fun. You need to, you're allowed to, eat a cheat meal every once in a while. And I'm like, guys, I'm not like being forced to do this. Nobody's holding
Yep,
a gun to my head.
yep,
It's a choice. And I want to wake up tomorrow and feel good. I want to feel proud that I'm able to stick to a plan and see results. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a lifestyle at the end of the day.
yeah. There's so many people that I get the comments from of, not even like I could do what you do if I didn't have X, Y, Z, blah 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 going on. And my response, it should be, no, you can't. Um, Not trying to be mean about it, but a lot of people, just like you said, they don't even have the discipline to not have a cheat meal 2 or 3 times a week. There have been times where I've gone 6, 7-ish months without a cheat meal, and I was totally okay. Okay, at the end of the day, like that was my decision. That's my goal. Nobody was holding a gun to my head to make me do that. But then again, everybody doesn't quite understand what we do. Everybody also thinks that drinking on the weekend, every single weekend, is a normal thing. Getting blackout drunk is also a normal thing. Um, Whatever. We all have our feelings and thoughts about things like that for sure.
It's always the same friends that say
Yep,
that. They're the same ones that complain, that don't like the way they look, that don't like the way they feel.
yep,
And I'm like, guys, there's a reason for that.
yep. And until they realize that everybody, I mean, again, everybody else has a sad story. Everybody else has it hard. Nobody's going to feel sorry for them. You could be overweight if you want to and enjoy that cheeseburger, but I might forego the cheeseburger and have some chicken and rice and feel good about myself and feel healthy. So, whatever floats your boat. But hey, we all have to have that identity shift, and it's ours. It's not theirs. So that's just kind of how I feel, at least. Um, but
The only other thing I'd add is just thinking about it. So like sometimes at like work events, um, me and Rand have talked about it. I get so aggravated when people are like, "Oh, why can't you have that or whatever?" And I just want to be like, "Oh, I can. Like if I want it, like."
yeah.
And part of me just like wants to snatch whatever they have in their hand out of it and just like eat it right in front of them and be like, "See, I can have it. It's just I don't want it." So,
Yeah, a lot of people, they just have no idea of the discipline that
uh,
it takes to
yeah,
not partake in some stuff like that, which I mean,
yeah.
whatever. That's them. I know when I worked at my normal job, they would bring in food for us all the time to snack on, eat on, or whatever. And they would always know, don't even ask Austin if he wants anything because he's not going to partake in it. I'm like, yep, that's cool. I mean, I didn't want it anyway. So, but I don't know. I like being different. I like being abnormal. So I think it's cool. But anyways, that was a good call. I appreciate you guys showing up. If you guys got any more questions or anything, please let me know. Um, but I'll talk to you guys soon. See y'all.